Hello and welcome. This is Jerry Mills speaking to you from northern Taiwan. Regardless of whether you believe in global warming, you probably will learn some useful things by watching this video. There is absolutely no question that sea levels have been rising all over the world. Sea levels have been rising since the end of the last great ice age, 15,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, Florida was about twice as large as it is today. The Florida Keys were a peninsula rather than a set of small islands. You've heard of the Asian land bridge leading from Asia, of course, to present-day Alaska. It wasn't ice, it was actually land. Sea levels were that low. Taiwan was literally a part of what is now called China. Furthermore, the Yonaguni Monument was on dry land. Now the uppermost part of it is under about 6 meters, that's about 20 feet or so of water. In fact, there was dry land all the way from present-day China all the way up to Yonaguni Island and beyond. We're talking about more than 200 miles. In Europe, Italy was connected to Africa. You could travel from Italy to Sicily to Africa overland. The present-day Isles of Scilly, that's Scilly, are about 35 miles from the main part of Cornwall County in England. 10,000 years ago, you could travel overland from Cornwall to Scilly if you wanted to meet Scilly people. Throughout the Western Pacific, a number of islands are in danger of sinking beneath the waves because of rising sea levels. Sea levels are continuing to rise. We all have a general idea of what's causing the rising sea levels. It's melting ice throughout the world. But what's causing the melting ice? There are differences of opinion on that. One is the belief that the world is getting gradually warmer. There's a more scientific explanation for what's causing the ice to melt. Ice melts when the air temperatures around the ice are above freezing. Regardless of whether temperatures are rising or falling, let's suppose you had a block of ice and the air temperatures around it were 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And let's suppose the temperatures rose to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a rise of 30 degrees. The ice would still not melt, even though the air temperatures are warmer. The ice wouldn't melt because the air temperatures are still below freezing. Now let's suppose you had a block of ice and the air temperatures were 70 degrees. Of course, the ice would be melting. If temperatures dropped to 40 degrees, so you have another dramatic temperature drop of 30 degrees, ice would continue to melt. Even though it's getting cooler, the ice is melting. Why? Because the air temperatures are still above freezing. Therefore, regardless of whether temperatures are rising or falling, that has little to do with whether ice is melting, because ice will continue to be ice as long as air temperatures are below freezing, and ice will continue to melt regardless of whether it's rising or falling, as long as the temperatures are above freezing. Now that we have that straight, we have two other questions to answer. How do we reduce global temperatures so that the ice is not going to melt anymore? Better yet, how do we reduce global temperatures so that we will get more ice and therefore more landmass? And the second is, I'll get to it shortly, but how much landmass do we want? And how cold does it have to be to get that much landmass? We reverse the melting of the ice by making it colder. How much is yet to be decided, but one way that it may be done, and there may be other ways to go about it in addition to this, is consider that in the deepest part of the ocean, regardless of the latitude, the temperatures are always a little above freezing. By using wave energy to draw the water from the deepest parts of the ocean to the open atmosphere in a spray, especially in the warmer parts of the globe, will help to lower temperatures. Of course, you would need a lot of those pumps, a lot of those sprays. It will be up in the trillions of dollars probably to pay for it. We could have them all over the world, but that would lower global temperatures, if you had enough of them, by a few degrees. And we could bring back the Ice Age, or bring back some ice, maybe not as much as it was 15,000, 20,000 years ago, but we could bring back the ice. Of course, we would have to make some sacrifices. One of the sacrifices, of course, would pay for itself, and that would be the cost of bringing all that water from the depth of the ocean. That would pay for itself by having more land and more opportunities. Just think of all those minerals and other wealth in the bottom of the sea that had not been mined. That's quite valuable. That would probably pay for itself. There are other sacrifices we'd have to make. For one thing, we'd have to sacrifice Canada. Oh, not all of it, just about 9/10 of it. If the new Ice Age played out the way the old Ice Age did, then there would be a corridor around the west central part of Canada. Putting Canada under that much ice would probably not be as big a sacrifice as most people might imagine. You see, people who use flat maps mistakenly believe that Canada is much bigger than it really is. Actually, it's only slightly larger than the United States. With Canada and the United States about the same size, Canada has only about 1/10 of America's population. They can fit in a much smaller area. We do, person per person. And so they can all fit easily within that corridor leading from northern to southern Canada. Now, farmers, there wouldn't be as much farming taking place. At this time, Canadian farmers have about 2 or 3 growing seasons a year. Instead of having 2 or 3 growing seasons a year, they can have 3 or 4 hockey seasons a year. Hockey is much more fun than farming anyway. There is one additional advantage to Canadian farmers producing less food. Canadian farmers will be exporting less food to the United States. thereby helping Americans with America's weight problem. If we can put a person on the moon, I won't say a man on the moon because that would be politically incorrect and perhaps misogynistic, although I don't know of any women who have been to the moon. If we can put a person on the moon, we can cool off the Earth by using these fountains of water coming from the depths of the sea. Now that you know how to do it, we can negotiate about how cool the world has to be, how much land area you need, how much ice we need to accomplish all this. It may be doable. I know some people are going to say this is a crazy idea. But let me ask you, do you have a better idea? Do you have a better idea as to how to make the world cooler and reverse rising sea levels so that we have falling sea levels? If that's the goal, tell me, how are you going to do it? This is Jerry Mills. Good day.